Imagine I told you that a perfectly logical, bulletproof argument could be built entirely out of lies.
Oh, that's a bold claim right out of the gate.
Right. I mean, structurally flawless, mathematically sound, but just, 100% false. It sounds kind of like a paradox.
Yeah, it really does.
But today, we're going to show you exactly how that is possible. Because, I mean, have you ever found yourself nodding along to someone's argument, maybe like a coworker pitching a new project or a politician on television?
Oh, absolutely. All the time.
And you know in your gut that they are completely wrong, but you just can't quite pinpoint why.
Yeah, it happens to all of us. You feel that friction in your mind. You
Exactly.
know the conclusion is off, but their sentences seem to link together so smoothly that you just can't find the exact place where the train jumped the tracks.
We spend our days assuming we know how to connect point A to point B, but we rarely stop to examine the tracks themselves. And that is what this custom-tailored deep dive is all about for you today.
Yeah, we are unpacking Virginia Clank's absolutely fascinating work, Understanding Symbolic Logic.
And our mission here isn't to tell you what to think.
No, not at all.
It is to teach you how to test the very structure of your thoughts. We're going to, strip human language down to its bare bones and learn how to mechanically calculate truth.
Which is quite a journey.
Hmm.
But to even begin building that kind of mental machinery, we have to make a very strict separation right away.
Okay, what kind of separation?
We have to separate a logical argument from a mere assertion.
Hmm.
Because people confuse those two constantly.
Right.
If someone says, you are going to fail this exam and disappoint everyone, that is not an argument.
It's just a really mean thing to say.
Yeah, exactly. It is just an assertion. It's a statement of belief or a mean opinion. It only becomes an actual logical argument when they provide premises, evidence to support that specific conclusion.
Meaning they have to add the why. Because you watched television all night instead of reading the textbook, therefore you are going to fail the exam.
Right. Now we have premises leading to a conclusion.
But Klink points out that even within the world of actual arguments, there is this massive divide in how we reason. We have inductive reasoning and we have deductive reasoning.
Yes. And the distinction between those two lies entirely in the intended strength of the connection between the evidence and the conclusion.
Which is a really important distinction for this deep dive.
Definitely. Most of the time, human beings run on inductive reasoning. Inductive arguments only give us probable support.
Like an educated guess.
Pretty much. Think about getting on an airplane. We know that statistically, a massive percentage of commercial flights land perfectly safely.
Thank goodness.
Right. So we inductively reason that our specific flight today will also land safely. We are completely justified in believing that. But there's still a tiny logical gap.
Yeah, because a flock of birds could fly into the engine.
Right.
Or, a freak weather event could happen.
Exactly. The premises, the historical safety data, can be entirely true, and your conclusion that you will land safely could still turn out to be false. Probability is not a guarantee.
But deductive reasoning, which is the entire focus of our deep dive today, is a different beast entirely. Deductive logic offers absolute support.
Absolutely.
In a valid deductive argument, it is absolutely fundamentally impossible to have all true premises and a false conclusion. There is zero gap.
And that absolute certainty requires a massive mental shift for most people, because it depends entirely on the form of the argument rather than the content.
The form, not what you're arguing about.
Right. The actual subject matter you are arguing about, whether it's airplane safety, tax law, or what to have for dinner, it is completely irrelevant to whether the argument is logically valid.
I was really trying to wrap my head around this concept of form versus content when I was reading the text, and I realized it's kind of like the underlying code of a video game.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, like the physics engine in a game is just a set of structural rules. That engine doesn't care if you drop a digital apple, a digital car, or, I don't know, a digital piano off a cliff.
Gravity is going to pull it down at the exact same rate.
Exactly. The form dictates the reality, regardless of the content. In logic, if the structural form is valid, the argument simply cannot fail logically, which leads to this deeply weird realization.
Which is what you mentioned at the start.
Yeah. You can have a perfectly valid argument made up of complete nonsense.
Because the structure guarantees the connection, not the truth of the statements themselves.
Right. So listen to the string of sentences. All horses are green. All green things are plastic. Therefore, all horses are plastic.
A classic logic example.
It is. And every single claim in that argument is objectively, demonstrably false in the real world.
Obviously.
But structurally, The physics engine of logic says that argument is 100% valid.
It's valid because logic is what philosophers call a normative enterprise.
What?
It operates on a standard of what ought to be, based on strict rules.
It doesn't care about the real world.
No, it does not care about the biological reality of horses or the chemical composition of plastic. It only explores the strength of the evidential connection. It asks one specific question.
Which is?
If the premises were true, would the conclusion have to be true? In your example, yes. If horses actually were green and green things were plastic, horses would have to be plastic.
So it's about the if.
Exactly. Evaluating that hidden connection rather than getting distracted by the content is a vital critical thinking skill. Now, if you have an argument that is structurally valid and it actually possesses true premises in the real world, we give it a special upgrade. We call that a sound argument.
A sound argument. Okay, but how do we bridge that gap from like messy, emotional human words to this strict mathematical structure?
We have to do some translating.
Right. To represent that video game physics engine, we have to break our everyday sentences down into basic building blocks. We divide statements into simple and compound sentences.
Right, so John went to New York is a simple sentence.
And John went to New York and Mary went to Paris is a compound sentence.
And the glue holding those simple sentences together is called a sentential operator. Now, when we speak normally, we have an almost infinite number of ways to connect thoughts together.
Oh, yeah. English is huge.
We use words like although, because, whenever, hopes that. But classical sentential logic strips all of that away and squeezes every human thought into just 5 basic operators.
Just 5. I mean, logic boils it all down to just 5 functions.
And it's remarkably efficient.
It is. We have combining things, which is the and operator. We have offering options, which is the or operator. And by the way, logic uses an inclusive or.
That's a good detail to point out.
Yeah, meaning one option, the other option, or possibly both. It's not like a restaurant menu where you have to pick soup or salad, but you can't have both.
Right, you can have soup, salad, or both soup and salad.
Exactly. Then we have setting conditions, which is the if-then operator. We have strict two-way conditions, the if and only if operator. And finally, negations, the not operator.
And we restrict ourselves to these 5 specific operators because they share a very special property that allows us to build a working machine.
What's the property?
They're all truth functional.
Truth functional.
Yes. This means the truth value of the entire compound sentence is 100% determined by the truth values of the component parts. If you know whether the simple input sentences are true or false, you can mathematically compute the truth of the whole sentence. It is entirely a function of its inputs.
Wait, I really wrestled with this when I was reading the source text.
How so?
Well, English is so incredibly rich. We have so much nuance. Why compress the absolute beauty of language into just 5 cold mechanical functions?
I get that.
Yeah.
Let's test what happens when we try to use a non-truth functional operator just to see why we can't use them.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's take the word because. It is an objective, true fact that Mount St. Helens erupted. It is also an objective, true fact that the state of Washington was covered in ash. If we linked those together with our operator, Washington was covered in ash because Mount St. Helens erupted, that resulting compound sentence is true.
Sure, that tracks perfectly. We put a true input and another true input into the machine, and the output is true.
But watch the machine break when we use 2 different true facts. Toyotas are made in Japan is true. Abraham Lincoln was president during the Civil War is true.
Both very true.
Now combine them using the exact same operator. Toyotas are made in Japan because Abraham Lincoln was president during the Civil War.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that compound sentence is totally false, but the inputs were exactly the same. True and true.
Exactly. We use the exact same truth value inputs, but we got a completely different output. That proves that the truth of a because statement is not determined solely by the math of its components.
It needs more information.
Right, because requires history. It requires context, causality, and real-world knowledge. Therefore, it is not truth functional.
That makes a lot of sense.
And confusing a sequence of true events with a truth functional guarantee is exactly what causes the post hoc ergo propter hoc fallacy.
The what now?
It's that dangerous assumption that just because one true thing happened after another true thing, the first thing must have caused the second. To build an objective lie detector, we have to discard non-truth functional operators entirely.
Okay, so we have to strip away the context to test the bare metal of the structure. I get that. But because we demand this strict truth functional input, the rules for computing our 5 operators create some Well, highly counterintuitive paradoxes for us.
You definitely do.
We are operating in a two-valued logic system. Everything in this universe must be strictly true or strictly false. There is no maybe, there is no mostly true, and you are absolutely not allowed to leave a blank space.
Which brings us to the most notoriously difficult quirk in symbolic logic, the conditional or the if-then statement.
Yes, the material conditional. It is a massive stumbling block for people first learning logic.
I'll admit, the examples in Klenk's text had me genuinely baffled at first. The computation rule for a conditional is this. An if-then statement is only false when the first part, the antecedent, is true, and the second part, the consequent, is false.
Okay, that part is logical. If I promise you, if it rains, the street will be wet. And it pours rain down, but the street stays bone dry, my statement was clearly false. I broke the promise.
A true antecedent leading to a false consequent breaks the conditional. That is the only scenario where the operator fails.
That rule means any conditional with a false antecedent defaults to true in the eyes of logic.
That's the part that trips people up.
You're telling me that the statement, if cats speak fluent French, then they write great novels, is considered a logically true statement simply because cats do not speak French.
Under the rules of sentential logic, yes.
It gets even stranger. Under this mathematical rule, the statement, if a nuclear bomb is dropped on New York, everyone dies, evaluates as true. But the statement, if a nuclear bomb is dropped on New York, everyone gets $1 million in benefits, also evaluates as true. How can two wildly contradictory outcomes both be considered mathematically true?
I know it feels completely absurd. It feels like a glitch in the matrix. But we have to step back and look at what logicians are actually doing here. They are utilizing a very weak material conditional.
Weak in what way?
Well, when a logician uses if-then, they are not claiming that causality exists. They're only claiming one highly specific thing. You will not encounter a situation where the first part is true and the second part is false. That is the entire claim.
So they aren't predicting the future.
No. If the first part is false, like if cats never speak French or the bomb is never dropped, then you haven't actually said anything false about the world.
And because we are in a strict two-valued system, if a statement isn't mathematically false, it has nowhere else to go. It has to be cataloged as true.
Precisely. If logicians left those rows blank or created a third category for irrelevant, we wouldn't have a complete decision procedure. The algorithm would stall.
It would just crash.
Yeah. We wouldn't be able to mechanically compute complex arguments. We willingly trade conversational nuance for absolute structural certainty.
But if we are relying on these rigid mathematical rules to save us, what happens when we feed sloppy, everyday English into the machine? We create a translation trap.
Oh, there are so many traps.
Since logic handles these concepts in such a rigid way, translating our messy human speech into symbolic logic is dangerous. A single misplaced word changes your reality. The biggest trap you will encounter is the vast difference between if and only if.
They look similar, but they represent completely different logical directions. They deal with sufficient conditions versus necessary conditions.
Think about getting into an exclusive VIP concert. Suppose someone says, if you are the lead singer of the band, you get past the bouncer.
Fair statement.
Right. In logic, being the lead singer is a sufficient condition. It is enough to get you through the door, but it's not the only way in. The drummer gets in, the sound crew gets in. Being the lead singer is sufficient, but not strictly necessary.
But watch what happens when we shift the phrasing just a little bit. You get past the bouncer only if you have a VIP backstage pass.
Now, the reality has totally changed. Having that pass is a necessary condition. You absolutely cannot get through the door without it, even if you're the lead singer.
Exactly.
Getting if and only if backward when you are analyzing an argument totally corrupts the mathematical reality of what you were testing.
It forces an incredible level of precision into our communication. Consider the word unless.
Oh, unless is tricky.
It really is. An employer pulls you into an office and says, shape up or ship out. They are stating an unless scenario. In logic, unless translates seamlessly to if not. So, you will be fired unless you shape up. Literally translates into the machine as, if you do not shape up, then you will be fired.
But as humans, we constantly assume a two-way street in normal conversation. We assume the boss is also promising the reverse. If you do shape up, you won't be fired.
Right, but logic forces us to look only at what is explicitly stated. The boss actually didn't promise you safety at all. They only guaranteed your firing if you fail.
That is terrifying.
Logicians have a term for that assumed two-way street. It's called a biconditional, or if and only if. But a strict unless is just a one-way street. We just project our hopes onto the phrasing.
We really do.
Another massive translation trap is how we handle negations governed by De Morgan's laws.
Oh, this is a great part of the text. It's the classic, dreaded professor example. There is a terrifying difference between not both and neither.
Huge difference.
If your professor stands up on the first day and says, you will get not both an A and a B in my class, that is trivial. Obviously, you can't get two different final grades.
Right, you get one grade.
But if the professor says you will get neither an A nor a B, that is a nightmare. That means the absolute best grade available is a C.
De Morgan's laws show us the actual mechanism of what happens when you push a negative through a sentence. It doesn't just negate the letters, it mathematically flips the operator itself.
It flips it.
Yeah, if you start with not A and B, and you distribute that negative, the and flips to an or. It becomes not A or R, not B. You have literally changed the mathematical shape of your options.
Wow.
Not both negates an and statement. Neither negates an or statement. Mixing them up builds a fatally flawed blueprint.
So, assuming we have safely navigated all these translation traps and we have correctly mapped out the blueprint of an argument using our 5 basic operators, we finally arrive at the payoff.
The best part.
We can mechanically test this argument to see if it's logically valid without relying on our muddy human intuition or our emotions. We construct what is called a truth table.
This is the ultimate objective lie detector. We create base columns that list every single possible combination of true and false for the variables in our argument. The formula for this is 2 to the power of n, where n is the number of distinct variables.
I want you to really visualize the sheer scale of the math involved here. If your argument only has 2 variables, let's say it's raining and the street is wet, that is just 4 rows to calculate. True, 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 false, false, true, false, false. Very manageable.
Totally manageable by hand.
But if you have 5 variables, it expands to 32 rows.
Right.
If you are testing a highly complex legal argument with 20 distinct variables, 2 to the power of 20 is over 1 million rows. Over 1 million possible parallel universes of truth and falsity.
And the truth table method requires us to search through those parallel universes looking for one specific thing.
A counterexample.
Exactly. We're hunting for just one single row where all the premises calculate to true, but the conclusion calculates to false.
And if we find it, even just one,
then the argument form is invalid, period.
Think about the uncompromising nature of that. Even in a 1,000,000-row truth table, if 999,999 rows are perfectly fine and you find just one single row with true premises and a false conclusion, the entire argument is dead. One structural crack brings the whole building down.
It's ruthless. But because drawing a 1,000,000-row table by hand would take a lifetime, logicians developed shortcut methods. The most elegant is the short method, where you intentionally try to force a counterexample to exist.
It's exactly like playing a game of Sudoku, where you are actively trying to break the puzzle. You don't start at the beginning, you start at the end. You look at the conclusion, and you deliberately assign values to force it to be false.
You make it fail on purpose.
Right. Then you carry those assigned values backward up the chain, trying to force all your premises to be true at the exact same time.
It is a brilliant stress test. If you can successfully force the conclusion false while keeping the premises true without contradicting yourself, you have proved the argument is invalid. You found the crack.
You broke the game.
Exactly. But if the puzzle blocks you, if forcing the conclusion false mathematically forces at least one of your premises to also become false, then congratulations, you have proved the argument is perfectly unbreakably valid.
This brings us to the profound beauty of what Clank calls the mechanical decision procedure. Because of 3 very specific features, we have a finite number of variables, we strictly use only 2 values of true or false, and we only use truth functional operators we possess a working algorithm.
We have a guaranteed recipe for the truth of the structure. We can definitively solve any sentential argument.
No deep philosophical thought, no emotional intelligence, and no creative genius is required to test the structure. A machine can run the algorithm. It really is an objective lie detector.
It is.
So what does this all mean for you as you move through the world? We just spent this deep dive reveling in the incredible power of strict true and false, black and white logic.
This is very clean.
Very clean. The absolute certainty of that mechanical decision procedure is incredibly satisfying. But Klink briefly mentioned something at the edges of this field that kind of haunts this perfect system.
Oh, the infinite valued logic.
Yes, the existence of infinite valued logics. These are systems where truth isn't just a switch. It ranges on a sliding scale from 0% to 100%.
It is a staggering concept because while sentential logic gives us a perfect X-ray of our structural reasoning, the reality of the physical universe doesn't always break down neatly into a clean binary code.
Exactly. I mean, how much of our daily human reasoning escapes the true-false binary entirely? What happens to our beautiful, perfect mechanical lie detector when the reality we're trying to measure is only like 60% true?
It gets messy again.
It brings us right back to that muddy water we started in. The structure of our reasoning can be flawlessly mathematically mapped, but the truth of the world we feed into that machine might just be a matter of degrees.
Which is something to really think about.
It really is. So the
But
next time you hear someone lay out a completely bulletproof argument, I want you to ask yourself, is their structure actually sound, or are they just hiding behind the binary? Keep testing those tracks.
thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.